Good evening.
Hi, Dean.
Hi, trying to get the video going. There we go.
Hi, Dean.
Hi, Peter, Greg, Maury.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Maury, as you look out the window, is the wind blowing hard? They say it's supposed to be a gale force tonight.
Is it really? I didn't notice it driving into town or getting out of the car, but
No.
boy, it certainly blew last weekend at times. But
Yeah, I don't hear it. Usually I hear it at my house.
Well, I thought I saw something on the weather report this morning about a lot of wind, but
Maybe
not.
later.
Yeah.
it was amazing that last windstorm we had where the trees came down. I always look at the offshore buoy reports, and the one off of Boston had 45 to 60 knot gusts, and the waves were 28 feet high.
Jeez.
When you think about where the ridgepole of your roof is, and think about a wall of water that high, pretty scary stuff.
Especially if it's breaking, it's just breaking onto you.
Yeah.
Grab that EPIRB and the bag you taught us all to grab on
Right.
our way to Halifax.
That's right.
I was
And
never in
always-
charge of it, but I certainly hope that somebody else would remember.
Yeah, and remember to always step uphill.
Yes, exactly. 28 feet. Golly.
Easy. Yeah.
Michael Pratt, are you on the 617 number?
He's muted. Traffic was brutal today coming back from Boston.
Oh.
Most days now.
The
I think
traffic,
less.
is the traffic back to its usual?
Well, I think it's worse because people are avoiding the T.
Oh, sure.
You know, it's with all these pandemic scares. But I made it.
Okay, I see Mark Weld has joined us. Mike Pratt, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, good.
I'm here.
You're the 617 number. Okay. So it looks like we're just missing Andy. So we have Mike, we have myself, we have Peter, we have Maury, we have Dean, and we have Mark. So I will call and we have Gail. I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. on Wednesday, December 1st. So our first order of business is to discuss the use of the American Recovery Plan Act funds. We had discussed that at our last meeting. Greg had sent us a spreadsheet of possible uses of the 1.5 million. We approved 642,200, which is for DPW projects. And we were going to have an additional discussion tonight regarding the balance of the funds and what we may or may not want to approve. Has there been any change, Greg, in the listing you originally sent us? Because I think Chuck was going to go back and look at some more things.
So no changes from his end at this point.
Okay.
Obviously, as he indicated last time, it could easily spend all of it and then some. The selectmen did approve using 15,000 for the Voices for Climate Action project being paired with monies from Gloucester and Rockport and possibly Essex. So they approved the same 642.2 that you did, or basically just thinking that they will hold off on other approvals at this point. We'll wait to see what other funds might become available for some of the economic recovery efforts that they have decided to move forward on three separate areas. And as I say, they did approve the 15,000 for the climate resiliency project under the Voices regional effort.
So as I recall, one of the goals for utilization of this money was to do design of projects so that perhaps we would be ready to collect other funding in order to actually construct the projects from the federal government. Is that correct?
Right. So that's the majority. Well, at least about half of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, about half of that 640 is toward design projects.
Okay.
Because I had a thought on
Sure.
When we approve these funds, should we be cognizant of other funds available, that might also go for this, like that SCADA thing? Would there be money under the infrastructure package that was just passed? That would it be more economical to use that and to save this for more something that wouldn't be covered under that? We have a grant writer now that is looking into that type of stuff, like whether we can fund things, or if funding is available through another source, maybe we can use this for something else that wouldn't otherwise be available. So like a research project. You know what I'm saying? As far
Yeah,
as
no, absolutely. No, that absolutely we should be cognizant of and be attuned to other opportunities, and we will continue to do that. So there's a balance between. So I think, as I say, a good chunk of the dollars are going to design to be in a position then to apply for some of that new infrastructure money, both at the federal and state level. We're waiting for more details in terms of the federal level. They don't have that information out yet. The state, I'm told, the House and Senate have reached a compromise. Both the House and Senate passed different versions of how they were going to use their ARPA monies and some surplus state money, and a large percentage of those dollars are targeted towards infrastructure projects as well. So we'll be waiting to see if that gets passed before the first of the year, and what opportunities that might open up as well. So likely those will again be for funding for actual construction projects, and so the more designs that we can have ready to go, I think the better off we are. So we'll continue to look for those opportunities.
Greg, is that the $4 billion bill that the Senate and the House state
Yes.
representatives? So
Yes.
my intelligence, actually, I had a call on this morning because one of the entities that I'm on the board of is awaiting a grant that's in that money.
Yes.
And the intelligence from a bunch of folks was that was going to be imminently passed and brought to the governor's desk on Friday. And that given the governor's future plans, it was unlikely that he would not sign it. So hopefully
Yeah,
by
that's
Friday,
consistent.
you'd know.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it only takes one nay vote in either the House or Senate, since they're both in informal session. So it's a little dicier, but you're right, Mark. I think the expectation is that they've come to agreement and everyone is ready to sign off.
Yeah, I think this week, which would be good.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Hey, Greg.
I was, oh, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I personally am happy we're talking about spending money on infrastructure and fixing everything that needs to be fixed. But I know when we've talked before about, CapEx, we've talked about, let's say, the bandwidth balance. We
Right.
could fix all the roads in 1 year, but we wouldn't do that because, right, everybody would get, mad because too many streets shut down. So I guess my question is just, how much do we have to keep that in mind as we're, looking at all this money and what we're going to spend it on and fix and all that kind of stuff?
Well, no, it's a good point, Mike. We do need to keep that in mind. And most of these funding sources are going to be over multiple years. So we should be able to meter it out. And in fact, there won't be enough, construction companies and engineers around to do all this right away. It needs to be metered out over multiple years. Yeah.
That's good. So that's the part I'm missing. All this, or at least a lot of this stuff is, like you said, it's over several years. It's not all one fell swoop. Okay.
Right.
Like the number I have, obviously, the $3 million a year in CapEx, which is $400,000 for roads and X dollars for water, right? And we came to those numbers partly for the dollars, but partly for the bandwidth, right?
Yes, I mean, we could, there's some flexibility there in terms of what we can tolerate on the ground and what the bandwidth we have. If you do an additional $1 million water line project someplace, particularly if it's a cross-country run to do a loop, we can be strategic that way as well to make sure that some of the projects that we do are not as intrusive.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Greg, what kind of time frame are some of these funds available from the federal bill? Is it 2 years, 3 years, that kind of time frame, or is it longer? Because I know sometimes it takes a project quite a while to get designed off the ground and actually in construction.
Right. So the ARPA funds need to be committed by 2024. You have another year or two to actually spend it. I don't know the details on the new infrastructure dollars. We haven't seen those kind of details come out yet. But we should be hearing that certainly by the first of the year at the latest. And then the state bill.
Yeah, I believe that the federal infrastructure bill that was signed into law is like for over a 10-year time frame.
10 years. Oh, it's a
Yeah.
long time. Oh.
Yeah. That's the one I was referring to, Mark.
Right.
Not the state one.
Greg, Peter brings up an interesting point, though, that if these funds have to be committed by 24, we're in budget year 22 right now. We're deciding about budget year 23, which will, yeah, we definitely want to keep an eye on the clock to make sure that some of this doesn't run out. But looking at what we voted on last time, almost $500,000 of it is not things that I would think would directly, the public would see and interfere with walking spread around town. It's like water pumps, SCADA systems, mixers, things that kind of happen in the background as opposed to up in front of everybody.
Correct. Yeah, up at the water plant or at the water tank. I mean, those are sort of out of sight, out of mind for most people.
Right.
And I'm assuming, Greg, that something like the SCADA that is 340,000, we would be looking at what's going on with other pools of money to decide whether we actually spend these dollars or get it from someplace else, depending on timing, et cetera.
Right, so if there's an opportunity to use a different funding source, we certainly would pursue that.
Okay. So just because we're voting on things doesn't mean we're just kind of authorizing it. It's not necessarily going to be spent if there are other more appropriate
Correct.
avenues.
Yes. Yeah, it'll take time to get these teed up and operational, and that'll give us some time to look at some of these other funding options.
I wonder, Greg, if a bunch of these seem to be oriented toward the water supply, but I know over the years, we're often dealing with capital having to do with sewage treatment. Were there opportunities to bolster up that system at all, or think about that, or is that less of a priority right now?
So in Chuck's mind, it's a little less of a priority, that these water needs, he really does put ahead of sewer. It's not to say sewer doesn't have its issues and needs. And when you look at the new capital 5-year plan, you'll see significant dollars going into sewer in 2 or 3 more years from now.
So do we want to go on and speak about the ones that are up for review this evening?
I guess I think the question is are we comfortable with where we're at? Or are there other things we want to consider? And of course, some of it may play into the budget process that we're going to start in January too. It makes it difficult, but yeah, did you want to speak to some of those other items, Peter?
Well, I just wanted to, I have my personal sense is a satisfaction with what we approved, the 642. I'm a little less clear on where the balance of the funds are now aimed. I see, water pipe construction and the like. Are we also being asked to evaluate that and possibly approve it, or is that so likely to come from another source that step is not called for at this time?
Greg, am I correct? We don't need to deal with all the money at this point in time. Do we have enough on the table to get things going?
Yeah, my feeling is that we do. I think, I think a minimum of $500,000 is probably going to go to water construction, regardless of what other sources we might be able to obtain. We'll see. I mean, if we get really lucky and get a windfall that's a couple million, then that could change.
Mm-hmm.
So my sense is around $500,000 of the 1.5 will go to actual construction of water pipes, and then the remaining 450-ish, 400. I do think we should reserve the 50,000 plus or minus for Board of Health needs. Everyone is sort of on pins and needles right now, waiting to see what this new variant is going to do and what sort of impact it might have. So I do think that's prudent to have that in reserve in case things get worse again. And then I think we need to see how we do on some of the economic recovery efforts. There are some other funding sources that we'll learn about next week. We have a meeting with some state officials next week to see what dollars might be available there. And I still believe it's prudent to use some of these dollars for some additional resiliency work, though again, there'll be a new round of grants that we will pursue in the springtime. So I think we're good where we are right now, as long as you're comfortable with that. And we will make some further decisions, I would say, in a few months.
Yeah, I think with respect to adding to the Board of Health budget, I would like something a little more concrete as to how the money is going to be spent and how it's a one-time expense rather than inflating the budget that would then have to be covered in future years. So I think maybe as part of the budget cycle, we can discuss that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have a better sense of specific needs in another few weeks, I think.
Okay, okay.
I think what happens over the holidays here is going to be critical. I think by the early January, we're going to have a much better sense of the lay of the land.
I had a thought on another idea. With Comcast and their rates going up and the talk of expanding broadband and the infrastructure bills, is there any way we could try to get some more competition in here, like the Verizon Fios or something? I don't know if it's applicable to that or if it's just to areas that don't have it at all, but that would be worth something that would be very beneficial to the residents, I would think.
Boy, I certainly
Dean,
second that.
yeah, I would love to be able to do that. Unfortunately, it's really targeted to specific areas. They set certain benchmarks in terms of what kind of service you currently have.
Right.
So many. I don't speak, cable speed, but I forget the thresholds. But they set actual certain thresholds. If you're below X, bytes per second, whatever that measurement is, then you qualify. But if you're above it, then you don't.
Thanks.
Greg, I just had a question about the water pipe construction, roughly $500,000. I think we're spending about $2 million a year out of a $3 million capital budget on pipes and that type of thing, typically on an annual basis. If this was lumped in with that, would that just be an add to what's already happening, do you think, or would it offset? Or how would you try to spend that in a year theoretically? It doesn't seem like a huge increase into what we're already doing, but absolutely helpful. I'm just curious about timing on it.
So, in the last couple of years, we've been trying to spend that amount in water and sewer, but that is not sustainable because of all the other needs. But we have the need to. We could easily spend that amount if we had it for water and sewer going forward. So these dollars would help us do that. And so it'd be in addition to the 3 million plus that we're targeting.
That's great. I guess the question is kind of, if we were spending 2 million and we added $500,000, it would be about a 25% increase on our efforts. Granted, we're spending less. Is that going to be a problem, or do you think we could spend that in a year and not be too disruptive?
Well, I think we can. I think we can, again, be strategic in terms of which projects are happening and make sure that there are some sort of out of the way projects that are still critical.
Yeah, good.
The other thing.
Hey, Greg.
Mike, go ahead,
Just
Mike.
do a quick follow on to Maury's thing there, just so I can, wrap my head around it. I mean, theoretically, if we got a huge blank check from the government, I mean, what's the total dollars to get all the pipes just, up to speed, just to the, I mean, obviously I'm talking round up, I mean, is 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, what's that number?
Well, from the water side, we're probably in the 15 million range.
15.
And on the sewer side, not as high for the pipes, but the treatment plant is going to need a couple million within the next 5 years. So between pipes and plant, sewer need is probably in the 5 million range.
Wow, but water pipes alone is 15 mil, huh?
Water pipe alone could probably be up to 15 million, yes.
Oh, okay, cool, thank you.
Now, the other thought that I had was, if the whole country's starting to focus on water pipes because they're funded and the price goes way up for the materials,
Right.
maybe would it be prudent to shift towards something more labor intensive like the dredging that we know that's coming up, to bankroll some of this CapEx for that 1.7 million hit that we're looking at.
Yeah, I'll just have to see what's eligible. I don't know if dredging is eligible under the federal infrastructure. We'll have to see.
Okay. Any more comments on this topic, or should we move on?
I'll sit here.
You okay, Mark?
Yes, moving on is good.
We can move on.
Okay. The next item on the agenda was to just have a brief discussion regarding what type of information we feel we need and from whom with respect to the overall plan of Parks and Rec for capital budgets, capital projects going forward, and what they see as their priorities. Because obviously we were somewhat blindsided this fall when they put the burn dump on, and there are no Parks and Recs item in the capital plan except for Sweeney Field. So it seems like we're missing some information if in fact they have a plan.
Is there a plan, Greg? A Parks and Rec plan?
So for the next 5 years, their focus is on fields, both Sweeney and now the burn dump. So that's their priority. Are the development of those two fields. There are some smaller projects that typically they can pursue some community preservation funding. You know, these are $15,000, $20,000 projects. You know,
I mean,
upgrade at the bathhouse, some repairs to Crowell Chapel, that type of thing.
I guess one of my concerns is a couple of years ago, they were talking about needing to improve the fields at Masconoma Park. And at the town meeting, the chair of the Parks and Rec Committee said it's not usable as a field. So it seems to me that we should have the chair of the Parks and Rec come before us and explain their plan, the need to get things into the overall capital plan if they want to get things done with town money. I mean, we've never heard from them, right?
Well, they're happy to come in. You just
Yeah.
need to ask.
Right,
Just
but
invite,
that-
and I'm happy
yeah.
to arrange that. So
I mean,
it's not
is
that
it-
they're avoiding you.
Right, but
It really is the only major avenue that has not had somebody in a senior level come in and say, this is what we want to do. Even when we first talked about Sweeney Park, and then there was very shortly thereafter, there was a presentation to the selectmen about the anticipated cost, which was much higher than was originally proposed. So I agree with Sarah. I think it's time to hear from Cheryl or Sean. I mean, I hear from him anecdotally at CPC, but I can tell you the CPC gets a lot more information than we have ever seen.
So
Yeah, I
again,
remember.
Very, very happy to arrange that. All you need to do is make the request and we'll line it up.
okay, yeah, maybe we
Was
can.
the pickleball court project under the Parks and Recs as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was another one.
And Greg, is there a plan?
Funding.
I'm still a little confused. Is
We
it
need
just that
the-
we haven't seen it, or is
Right.
it?
We need the committee to come in and tell us whether they have a plan, Peter.
Okay.
I mean, they're
didn't
the
know if
ones, they're the
Go
ones
ahead.
responsible, right? And we've never heard from them. So we don't know.
Again, all you have to do is ask. and
Right.
we'll make it happen. So
Okay,
they're very happy to do that. I don't know that they have felt that you needed that. So if you need it, they're happy to do it.
Okay, I know this is like a chicken and an egg, but I think, Greg, we're asking for your assistance in the sense that if you see something like this on our agenda, then, right, you can kind of just throw out the line to them, right?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
so when we set up the schedule for the budget review, we'll set up someday when we have them come in and just explain to us what their plan is. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Everyone in agreement with that? Are you okay with that, Maury? You're
Lori, you're
muted.
muted.
And with
Sorry
the,
about that. No, I think that sounds like a great plan. I almost wonder, when we go through the budget process, various members of our committee kind of tag out to talk with police, fire, if we might even want to have Parks and Rec and maybe do a little deeper dive on capital this year. Just
Sure.
because 5 years going out, it's good to be coordinated on this with them and understand what's going on.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is an update on the Black Earth contract and the new compost site.
I was, Nate, at Greg's suggestion, thank you, about 2 weeks ago, sent me the, what at that point, Greg, I guess, was the most recent markup of the contract.
Right.
I've gone through it, and I have 2 or 3 areas just of questions that I could probably do with you, Greg, with a phone call most efficiently, but things like, in one area of the contract, it speaks about that they basically have the option to run the transfer station. And then in another area, it says they're compelled to run the transfer station. So it could be just my interpretation of certain language. And also just a couple of items on dispute resolution in the event that they don't do certain things. What are their remedies? I think they're pretty straightforward, but I just want to confirm, because that was one of the items that the finance committee was concerned about, was in the event that they failed to perform in some way, given the extremely sensitive area that we're dealing in here, could we move quickly to remove them and take control? And it looks like all that's been dealt with pretty well. But again, I would say to the members of the committee, I think that the contract looks pretty good. And I just have these 2 or 3 areas, and I'm sure with a phone call with Greg, I could probably resolve my concerns.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, Mark, happy
Guys,
to do that.
Just high level, what's the timing for this project, contract, whatever?
So it's taken a lot longer to get a final contract ready to sign. It's not quite ready. They haven't signed off on it yet. There's still a few areas that the lawyers are haggling over. I think it's very close, but it's not quite there. It should be there, I'm hoping in a couple of weeks. So it's looking like, final contract in place by the first of the year. And then construction takes place basically for the year. So we're a little more than a year away from new operations at the new location.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Maury, do you have any questions on this?
No, I see the Black Earth trucks around. I'm just curious, are they doing okay financially, labor wise, all that? Are we still comfortable with them as a partner on this?
Yeah, they continue to grow. Their business continues to expand into other communities. They pretty steady state in terms of households they're servicing in Manchester. But as a company, they do continue to expand. So they seem to be doing well that way.
they opened a big facility in Hanson, I believe. So that might have been a reason for some of this delay.
Greg, I have the impression that particular people there's sort of some key people in this operation. If they were not available for any old reason, can that organization, Black Earth, continue? Do they have enough people to take over if some of the key 1 or 2 people were not available? This is a little bit of a variation on Maury's question. Was management stable and deep enough to keep it going.
Right. So I don't have a really good feel for that, Peter. That's a good question. We can inquire a little bit in terms of how deep of a bench they have.
Mhm, mhm.
Certainly, the two principles are pretty key at this point.
Yes.
Are they about the only entity in the region doing this, or is there other competition?
There are some new firms that are trying to get into it. They're, I would say probably Black Earth is further along. But you are seeing some interest from other folks, other startups pursuing a similar line of business.
Greg, I was interested to see that in the notification provisions of the contract, that their notification was, had a copy to an attorney in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Is that as a result of investors or an uncle that's a lawyer, or,
Yeah, I don't know I don't know that connection. Yeah, I'm not
Cheapest
sure.
attorney they could find, Mark.
what's that?
Making a joke. Cheapest attorney they could find, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Hopefully they're admitted into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Mhm, mhm.
Well, I think these questions are, I mean, short of a key man type provision, this is why I think we shared that concern that if the performance was lacking, we would have fairly immediate and substantial remedies. And I'm pretty sure, subject to my talking to Greg and making sure I understand this, that's kind of the case here. So.
Yeah, we
What's the
certainly asked
ownership?
our counsel. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
What's the ownership structure? Like, what is it? Just like I heard two principals. Is it a 50-50 kind of owned directly by two people, or?
Well, they have brought on new investors as well. I don't know the full depth of that.
What type of legal entity is it?
LLC.
Okay. Were you going to say something else, Greg?
Oh, yeah, just that in leading up to, putting the contract together, we certainly asked our counsel to pay special attention to failure to perform and remedies. So we, including performance bonds and also a decommissioning clause and bond.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on this subject? Next is an update on town projects and grants. You have anything, updates on those things for us, Greg?
Yeah, fairly quiet on the grant front right now. Like I say, Sue Brown and Sue Croft, who is our new grants person, is meeting with some state folks next week on options for economic recovery funds to help implement some of the recommendations that came out of that project. We do have a verbal commitment from MAPC to help with a parking analysis of the village core area. Planning board is reviewing that. There'll be a need for some matching dollars for that, and that'll be part of the budget request. So those are the two areas of most active grants. We are hoping to hear from the large FEMA grant, hopefully sometime the next couple, 3 weeks. We're supposed to hear in December. it continues to be encouraging. They have asked a few more clarifying questions, and so that's usually a good sign when they're asking some sort of in the weeds questions about the project. So we're hopeful that that'll be a positive coming forward on the Central Street Culvert project. In terms of construction work, the pipe work, 4th Street is about wrapped up. Design work is underway. Tappan Street with drainage. The sewer plant and water plant, both different equipment upgrades being finalized with the engineers. The seawalls and Stinky Beach, West Beach, and also the revetment on Singing Beach, those have been wrapped up with FEMA dollars. We are still working with our FEMA reps on the CARES money and COVID. We've gotten three installments paid, so we're making progress and are finalized the paperwork for the fourth submittal just yesterday. So we should be getting the 4th payment hopefully on that, and there'll probably be one more that we submit. So slow but surely, we're getting reimbursed for some of those extra COVID expenses that we incurred. Public radio system is pretty much complete in terms of upgrades, and they're working much better with the new radios and the clarity and the ability to have contact throughout town with some new antennas that have been installed. So that's good. Seaside 1, the exterior painting was wrapped up. Had to do some some little touch up, but they came and did that before it got too cold. So that's good. The HVAC system in Town Hall is all functional and done. So that's been good. A little too warm, but working a little too well. We're trying to get still trying to get some adjustments done there to make sure that we're not overheating. Trying to think of other. So again, I think I mentioned last time the new floats and ramp at Tux Point off the rotunda. We do have contractor lined up and ready to go, and we'll do that project in April and May and have it ready before Memorial Weekend. So it worked out to go back out to bid and get a better price, giving a longer period of time to get that project done. And so that's all teed up and ready to go.
Did we get the permit signed on that? On the Tux
Yes.
Point?
Yeah, the final permits we did receive from Army Corps.
Greg, where are we on the regional call center?
So the regional center is in the middle of conducting their feasibility study. They are waiting for a few more details from us in terms of how our IT network is set up and how they would tap into that. And so we will get them the last of their questions answered this week. And then we should have a report back from them probably the end of, I'm going to say the end of January, early February. And then with that in hand, we'll need to make some final decisions.
Yep. And I noticed that the Tide had in a somewhat extensive article from the harbor master about the boat situation. Will we have to charter a boat to, because I gather that the replacement for the patrol boat will not, he thinks, will not be available for the season next summer. So do we need, is that a developing issue, do I gather?
It is. I think Brian's pursuing some options, and he's, once he has those options nailed down, then we'll talk about which one makes the most sense.
And my last question is, I got introduced to an area of town which was new to me. You all probably know it. It's when I went to vote the other day. It's the building that looks in rather tough shape when you go in that roadway, which takes you to the gymnasium rear entrance where the polls were.
Yes.
The buildings to the right, are they part of the water department?
So that's called Home Station.
Okay,
And as part of the new high school construction project, the state required us basically to abandon that building because it is so close to the wellhead across the stream, the Lincoln Street well, which is a major
Yes.
water supply
Yes.
for the water system. And so as part of some back and forthing, it was before my time, but the bottom line is that the state required that that building not be actively used. And so the question is what to do with it.
okay, well, it looks like it's in very tough shape, but I just,
It is. So
Yeah.
we as time goes on, it obviously deteriorates further. So a decision is going to be needed. Will we get permission to be able to have some use of that building and spruce it up and make it usable again?
Yep.
Or is it a hopeless case and we're going to have to take it down?
okay, thank you.
It's
Greg,
just a-
go ahead. Did you want to say something, Maureen?
I was just going to say, I know somebody who was involved in that project.
Yes.
And it ping ponged back and forth between the town and the district. And there may be some hidden costs in that. And that may be part of a capital plan or some thoughts about a capital plan. But I presume that's all kind of in your court, Greg, about what's there and what's needed, what the options are. And it's I think it's probably a little more complicated than let's open the doors and go in and start using it.
Yes, it is.
There's some stuff going on there that may need some investigation.
Right.
Greg, I thought at one point that the DPW was going to be taking a look at all of our buildings and determining, perhaps future repairs, future lifespan. Is that something that has been started or is that backburnered?
No, so in terms of sort of mechanical needs and various repairs and renovations, we have a pretty good roadmap for the different buildings. In fact, we were reviewing that this afternoon as part of the new capital plan and what needs to be inserted. In terms of a longer term, what's the 50-year outlook for our different buildings? Again, we were talking about that today, and I'll be recommending as part of next year's capital budget that we put some money into the budget so that we can do a very comprehensive look at where are we going to house police and fire 20 years from now. What's the best location and option for a DPW facility? So I think we need to do that in order to help us make some of these decisions about the different properties we have.
Okay.
And so that'll be part of the recommendation for the FY23 capital budget.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
And Greg, on the shorter term kind of fixes and things, is the fire station in that mix of buildings?
Right. So, some upgrades to their furnace and different repair, window repairs to some of the buildings.
Yeah. But some of that, which is kind of needed on a shorter term basis, is in
Right.
part of that.
Yeah. New generators so that we can make sure we can operate the buildings when we lose power for a few days.
Yep.
That's unfortunately that's in our future more often, I think. So we need to be a little better prepared along those lines.
Good.
And I will tell you, as the committee's de facto real estate designee, Mr. Alderman and I were invited by Nate DeRozier to tour the major town facilities, and we did so last week. So we'll probably sit down together and then talk to Greg and a few others, and it was a very interesting look-see. So I think we're in sync on that's a priority. So
Fantastic.
What was the library in there with the HVAC and the
No.
bathroom?
we
That's
did not
separate.
go through the library. I kind of view that as a different entity, but
We were able to upgrade the HVAC system in the library using some Green Communities money. So and some CARES money. So they have a much better system now. That's brand new.
Okay, so we finished with this topic?
Just have one more question. Greg,
Sure.
how do you feel the town did, that is the town government did, with the recent storm where we didn't have power out for a couple of days, in terms of us being able to keep functioning without central power on? Generators are working, and police department, fire department, and all of that. How do we do?
Yeah, so fortunately, Town Hall and the fire station did not lose power.
Oh.
The
I
lights
went
kept up.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, us out in the hinterlands lost power for
No,
quite a while.
I was out for over 2.5 days myself, so.
I charged my phone there. and
Yes,
made
yeah,
calls.
we had quite a few people charging phones at Town Hall. The water plant generator performed and kept the water plant functioning the whole time. So that worked well.
The sewer, how did sewer do?
So again, sewer did not lose power either.
Oh, it didn't lose
Power
power.
of underground electric.
Um,
Downtown, we have underground electric, so.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that
I have
helped, though.
underground electric and lost it.
Right, the lines feeding into that underground are
Yeah.
not underground.
There's the, yeah.
We would like to follow up with National Grid to see what can be done to have more options for power coming into town, rather than be so reliant on just one or two major transmissions coming into town. That's
I've been following that. And it's my understanding that National Grid is trying to run a new cable from Salem to
Yes.
the East Beverly substation, and they're getting pushback from residents in Beverly, so Beverly has not yet approved it.
right.
Yeah, so,
I mean, eventually they'll figure out something there. But that is a multi-year project, I guess. It's a multi-year construction project.
and the line goes back to 1971. Existing cable runs along the tracks.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's an old line. It's an oil-filled line that I was just learning today that they have to dedicate crews to monitor it 24/7.
Yeah.
It's in that bad of a shape.
So we're good with this item? Let's move on to minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. And Gail, all of them have an issue with the spelling of Peter Twining's name. There's an extra N. It says Twinning, not Twining.
Yeah, I have not changed it yet, the twinning.
not had to.
So did people have a chance to look at these minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take up the ones from February 17th first. I will have to abstain from this since I didn't attend the meeting. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from February 17th, 2021?
So moved.
Maury moves. Do I have a second?
Peter,
Peter seconds. Any discussion on the minute? I'll take a roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Maury,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes,
Mike,
Yes,
and Sarah abstains. Okay. Next is the minutes from March 31st. And it looks like Mr. Weld was not at that meeting. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 31st, 2021?
So moved.
Peter moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Maury seconds. Any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Maury,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Dean,
yes.
Mike,
yes,
and Sarah votes yes. And then the final set of minutes we have are from our last meeting on November 3rd. Any changes to those minutes other than spelling of Mr. Twining's name? I'll take a motion to approve these minutes from November 3rd, 2021.
So moved.
Peter moves. Second?
Second.
Maury seconds. Take a roll call vote. Maury,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Mike,
yes.
Dean,
I've got to abstain because I didn't receive a copy. Were they with the other ones?
no, there was a separate email from me
Okay.
later in the day. Okay. Sarah votes yes. So at least we have some minutes on the books.
Mhm.
Next item on the agenda is to discuss our next meeting, which it's my understanding it will be a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on December 14th, which is a Tuesday, I believe.
Right.
And in order to have town administrator present the initial budget to both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Is that correct, Greg?
Yes, that's what we'd like to try to do if it works for everybody.
And what would be the time, the start time for that meeting?
So we could do it at 7 o'clock.
Okay. I think that's what people prefer. Now, as we move into 2022, we obviously don't know yet whether we're really going to have a town meeting the first Monday of April, but I think we have to prepare to do so. So I think that's going to put a little pressure on us regarding our schedule, because for the last 2 years, we've had the luxury of additional time. So what my plan is because of the 40B meetings and ZBA meetings on Wednesdays, I'm tied up 3 Wednesdays of the month. So what I'm suggesting is that the Finance Committee meets on Thursdays, starting the first Thursday in January, which would be, if I can find my calendar, January 6th. And then we'll meet weekly as needed until we finish our business. Is that acceptable to people?
Works for me.
It's okay. I will not be able to make the 4th Thursday on a regular basis because I have a standing commitment for that, but we'll
Okay.
move forward to Thursdays.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Is there any other business people would like to discuss that I didn't anticipate and therefore it's not on the agenda?
I had one question. Again, going back, Peter mentioned earlier the water line thing that Bion sent out to everybody today. And it mentions CPC participation in something called the Fisherman's Facility Project. And I was wondering, Greg, can you just is that docks and floats or what, it seemed like it didn't define what the engineering effort and all that was about there. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so yes, it's basically a proposal to put in new floats between Reed Park and the existing Morse Pier. So it's basically a set of floats along the seawall on the drive into Masconomo Park.
So it'll be
So
along
there-
Beach Street?
Well, it might curve around a little bit. I don't.
Okay.
It'll be primarily along Masco, the drive, the entrance to Masco Park.
Oh,
With-
okay.
With more ramps down to them, Greg, or
So,
just connected?
A ramp coming down off of Morse Pier,
Okay,
and then a number of slips for the
Mhm.
fishermen. So it would enable fishermen to have direct access to the boats rather than having them out on a mooring, which prolongs actually the length of time that fishermen can continue to fish. It's just more work to take a dinghy out to your boat on a float rather than to walk on a dock to get to your
Mhm.
boat. So for fishermen who are getting older and a little less nimble, it's easier to have your boat out on a float rather than out on a mooring.
The trial for this is the two fishing boats owned by Stan Koch and Mark Chafee that are at the base of that ramp coming directly off Morse Pier. And
Correct.
they tried that starting a couple of years ago, and it markedly improved their lives and production. So I think Bayern wanted to focus on a possible solution for others as well.
Yeah, so we received a grant from the Seacoast Economic Development Council to do this design work, and we had some matching dollars from CPC. And then we anticipate something similar if it looks viable, and we could pursue additional funding from the Seacoast Council as well for the actual construction.
Do you anticipate any dredging in there? My recollection is it gets a little shoal as you go from.
I don't know how they
Old
do
Pier
that,
toward
Maury.
Captain Dusty.
That's a great question. I don't know how that happens.
I don't know why they didn't dredge it when they did the other dredging,
No, they did. So a good portion of that was dredged.
but not up to the seawall.
Not up against the seawall, but I believe it's close enough.
It's like
So
30
Tom-
feet out,
Yeah.
the muck.
You'd have to keep it out that far because of those
Okay.
old masonry walls.
Okay,
Unless you want to
Yeah.
put sheeting.
Yeah, you don't want to get too close to that wall. Exactly.
okay.
Oh, and we also have the NOAA boat, if you'll recall that discussion, that was at least in there this summer, the 27-foot version. I'm not sure where they put the 42-foot version or whatever. But, I'm assuming Bayern will have that in his budget update.
Yes, I don't know if he's heard from Noah about whether or not they are going forward with a larger boat or not.
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
have to follow up with him.
I know there was some issues about the parking spaces that they were given. There's not a lot of parking. And we have to decide whether the revenue is worth the parking inconvenience as well. For those flip rentals or whatever for town revenue.
What do we get for revenue for that?
Well,
The
for
Noah?
the Noah boat was.
Yeah, the Noah.
Wasn't it $5,000 or something?
Is
I'll
in
make
that, it's in that range. That might be a little high.
Okay.
I was going to say 3,500, but I'll have to double check.
It
There
was
a
for a
bid in
short
the- There was
period.
a bid and ask on that one. We were in one place and they were substantially lower to start, so.
Right, but I think they agreed to the higher number, but I'm not remembering what that
But
came
it was
in
a
at.
partial season.
Yes,
Yeah. So a full season would be more.
correct.
Not to look a gift horse in the mouth, but why are they considering Manchester? I mean, were they originally based out of Gloucester? And I guess I asked the question, would Beverly or Salem be more centrally located for their operations, or what's the thought process here?
They were, believe it or not, Maury, they were in Situate.
Yeah, they would, yes.
That required their guys to drive all the way down there. They can't go to Gloucester, they'd be sunk. So this probably was the most expeditious for those that are using the boat. That's my recollection, Greg.
Yeah.
Yes, no, you're right, Mark. And our fishermen were fine with them being neighbors.
Gloucester was not.
Gloucester was,
Aside from the parking issue.
Anything else we need to discuss tonight? Then I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Peter moves to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Maury seconds.
Let Mark have it. My name's on too
Oh,
much stuff tonight.
Mark seconds.
Come on, Mark, step up.
I'm still,
I'll take a roll call vote. Mike,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Maury,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Mark,
yes.
and Sarah says yes. So I will see you all on the 14th. And that's going to be via Zoom, right, Greg?
probably.
Okay,
We're,
okay.
we're real close. I thought we were going to have our first hybrid meeting next week, but it's been pushed back another week. So
Oh, I was hoping to have one next Wednesday.
we can probably do it because it doesn't need to be broadcast. So the Selectmen's meeting also are broadcast. So we can,
Okay.
yeah. We should be good to go with.
I was hoping just to have
non-broadcast.
the ZBA in there and then have Zoom for the residents.
Right, that
Okay.
should work. That should
Okay.
work.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Sarah.
evening.
Good job. We'll see you soon.
See ya.